about 15 years ago, I was sort of where you guys are, and most of the people come to these presentations are, and I was hoping to make a mark on the world with my talents. But what actually happened was I woke up in the twilight of my 20s, and I sort of drifted into middle management. I was a 9-to-5 corporate injection molded drone, basically, and a fairly respected job, you know, decent pay. But my only sort of form of leisure was just buying loads of shiny crap that I didn't really need, which is probably a lot of people. And that's no way to live, really. I accept that not everyone hates their jobs, but I just get the impression that a lot of people are quite happy to accept mediocrity or just a sort of a job that doesn't test them particularly much, and then they can just buy stuff to keep them happy. Success, but to me, it's in you get a graduate placement, you get a suit, and you hate your life, and that's it for the rest of your life until you're 60. That's what it was sold to me as, or rather what I realised it was once I'd got there in the twilight of my 20s. But it doesn't have to be like that. You don't have to do what's respectable and what's correct. It's you can earn a living doing what you enjoy, and you can listen to that little voice inside that's saying, you know, I could probably be I'd enjoy my life more if I listened to that little voice inside me saying I'm probably better off being my own boss. And that's what I did. So I leapt away from straight out into the deep end, from full-time employment into being a freelancer. And this is a sort of a story of my journey over the last sort of 7 years. It's particularly the first two because they're the difficult bit, but we'll come to that. Most people realise what's happening in the picture here, but I don't think everyone's clued on, so we're going to skip over that. You realised, didn't you? So this is sort of the manifesto behind my story, and this is the ethos behind the book that I wrote as well, called The Human Freelancer. And it's about earning a living from doing what you enjoy and what talents you have. So there is no work-life balance when you're a freelancer. It's just one and the same thing. You have talents and you have hobbies that you enjoy, and you make money from them, which it sounds surprisingly simple, but some people don't do that. They just drift into careers that they think they ought to do. And it's about making just enough to live sustainably. So my theory is that you work out basically how much you need to live comfortably and give yourself the little luxuries, and then you stop earning. You just stop working, and you spend the rest of your time doing what you enjoy. I mean, it sounds like you're gloating for some reason in society if you say, I only work 3 days a week, and I basically just came over the tax threshold last year. That isn't gloating, that's just a lifestyle choice, and it's great because I have, more time to do things that I enjoy doing, whether that's, going on your bike or tinkering with things, DIY, baking, whatever the hell it is. You can do more of that because that stuff is what makes life worth living, basically. Okay. So we're going to talk about the kind of person who would suit freelancing. It's a sort of a characteristics of people who seem to do well in freelancing. It's not prescriptive, but we'll go through it in a moment. We're going to talk about what it's like. I know you both said that you want to get an idea of what freelancing is actually like, and I'll talk you through how I get work and how I work, the kind of things I've done, because that'll give you a flavour for what it's like. And I'll give you some little practical steps at the end that you can take that will sort of get you in the mindset for becoming a freelancer. It's not something I expect you to do straight out of this lecture, and I probably would say don't go straight into freelancing straight after university, and I'll explain why. I want to put a seed in your mind so that a few years down the line you think, oh, actually, I remember what that lunatic said in a lecture a couple of years ago, and I found it quite inspiring, and now I'm going to try it again. Okay, so that's what I want to do.
Is it not something you can do alongside other things?
Yeah, you can. That's one of the ways, part of the transition. You can part-time and be a freelancer at the same time. I'd say it's difficult to be full-time and freelance. I tried that. It's just too hard. You do it at night. I jumped in straight at the deep end, which was quite intense. But yeah, for some people, you can have a job. It doesn't have to necessarily be a career job, a happy job. You can flip burgers and be a freelancer. Try that. But I'll talk about that on the transition. So this is what makes a natural freelancer. This is the kind of person who seems to take more naturally to freelancing and finds it a bit easier. So they tend to be free thinkers, independent-minded. They sometimes don't go on with authority figures because I don't know whether they think they can do a better job than their boss. They tend to be organised and motivated so they can go away in their own time and get on with things at their own pace. They don't like, again, being told what to do. They quite happily motivate themselves. They are principled, honest people. They sort of hate letting people down. They take a pride in their work, and that's quite good for clients. And finally, they tend to be this person is described as handy. They're one of those people who you might say can turn their hand at anything. They're sort of not a jack of all trades, but they might be sporty as well as quite good at fixing things, that kind of ilk. When I told my wife I was putting this in the presentation about the characteristics of a natural freelancer, she said you shouldn't do it because it's going to put people off. It's going to scare them. What if someone listens to that and goes, I'm not a free thinker, I'm not handy with anything, I just have this talent. Well, it's not a prescriptive list, it's just I've noticed that people who have these characteristics seem to do quite well. So if it sounds like you, then hopefully it'll sort of prompt that seed a couple of years down the line. And you can learn these things, you can become more motivated, you can become more independent and creative. These are things that can evolve. This is the crux of the presentation, really. They won't tell you this in any business self-help book that you can buy. They won't tell you just how demanding on your confidence, your self-esteem it is, because it can be quite isolated. You are your own boss. If someone criticises your work, you don't have a line manager who will tart it up for you and do you one of those compliment sandwiches with say something nice, then he tells you something bad and tells you something nice again. There's none of that. It's just straight. It comes in an email, it comes in the phone. It does happen. Still does happen. And people will say you've got a lot of courage for not taking a safe job and not taking that salary that goes automatically into your bank account every month. People say you're mad for doing that. Aren't you brave? And I don't think that is a brave thing to do. I think it's sensible. Taking a safe job that you don't enjoy because you need the money to pay your mortgage. It's not. In my opinion, I don't think that's the greatest way to spend your life. And by the way, I do have a mortgage, so I have real life grown-up commitments. The really brave thing that you need courage for is, like I say, it's the pressures it puts on your self-esteem and the demands of personal growth and learning from situations and learning new skills. They're the things that really demand courage. So this is typical day. I know I spoke to you girls, you want to know what sort of things happen in my sort of average day. You tend to get ambushed quite a lot. So you'll get a phone call out of the blue, and it will be someone who's seen your work, or they found you on the internet or LinkedIn, or more likely they've heard about you from someone else who you did work for. That's how you get work. And they will say, I like what you do, I've seen what you've done with such and such a company, and I'd like you to come and help me fix this problem. You will go to meet this this company or a person. I tend to work with smaller companies, but it can be big old companies as well. And you will meet new people, go to new places, and you will be there as a respected authority. It's really strange this, but they just assume because you have positioned yourself as a freelancer that you're the expert and you're an authority, and they will ask for your opinion and they will act on your opinion. And I quite like that, because in my normal job I was just a face in a machine. I was never sought out for my expertise. With freelancing, people find you and they want to talk to you because you've got a specific skill or more likely experience. And it leads to all sorts of interesting jobs. I'll give you some examples. I did one for Ecology Building Society, which do sort of eco-sustainable homes, and I went around taking pictures of their sort of eco-friendly buildings that were sort of environmentally minimising the damage on the environment with renewable energy and stuff. And that got me really switched on to that, and people were like feeding me pizza and giving me food, and this was something Dunballen in Scotland and in Cornwall and like remote parts of Devon. And I would never have normally had that experience, and they liked my photos and they wanted those in their annual report. So they paid me to do that. It was crazy. They paid me to eat pizza and go and meet nice people. And then you do other stuff like in my role as a copywriter, writing marketing stuff and words for websites. That's mostly what I do for a living. I was writing a menu for Brown's restaurant, and they had a new Christmas menu, and they were asking me to essentially tart up what they'd written and make it sound more, your typical sort of wine descriptions of how it smells and tastes. And I'd never drank it or eaten it before in my life. And I was writing these descriptions for food, and I thought, I'm a liar, I'm just making this up, but it was just being creative, and they loved it. They thought it was brilliant, and I thought, this is great, I want more like work like this. Sorry if I'm sounding really smug, because I'll make you feel better now, and I've done really crap, awful jobs, like I did one for, I won't mention the name actually, it's a big regional development agency that we're getting, that will sort of promote Yorkshire, business in Yorkshire to the outside world, China and that kind of thing. And they essentially wanted me to do what I was told and write what you're told. We want it to sound this way, very corporate, very lifeless. And it was essentially just inviting multinational tax-dodging corporations to gang rape Leeds' economy. It was awful. It was one of the worst jobs I've had. And, but you get through it. And the reason I brought up these examples is not to be really smug about how good my life is. It was to sort of say, it's really good and it can be really bad, and there is none of this mediocrity, day in, day out, work a day, usual crap that you get. And for me, freelancing delivers more of that, the highs and the lows, especially at the start when you're learning. Like, I accept that in a standard everyday job, there's plenty of opportunities to become depressed and ill, but you don't get quite the highs that you get with freelancing, because everything that happens, you chose to do it. People sought you out, and you decided to work, and it was all off your own back, and that's really rewarding. At the end of the project, you can go, that all happened because of me and what I did. I don't owe anyone anything. I can just be really happy and smug that this was my work. Okay. So despite what I was saying about how awful a 9-to-5 corporate job is, I think the best thing you can probably do is to get a crap job for a couple of years. And I say that because there's no better way of understanding how spectacularly inefficient the wheels of British commerce are, unless you've been inside and seen how businesses, especially large organisations, operate. It gives you an appreciation for what's going wrong, what irks you, what annoys you, what you enjoyed fixing about it, what your skills and strengths are. And this sounds quite esoteric, I'll give you an example. Like, for me, it's always been about, I've always enjoyed taking complex things apart, complicated things, and making them simpler. And while I was working at the NHS, I found that a lot of the stuff that they were producing, the literature, the websites, was just, it was just so distant from reality and complicated. And it was, people's health, it's quite serious. You need to be simple and honest about it. And that really annoyed me. And I sort of matched up that talent for writing with the need for better communication, and thought, right, well, sounds like I'm a copywriter. And that's what I'm saying to you. If you get a crap job, you'll go in and you'll see what's wrong with the world, and you'll think, okay, well, I see this problem, I think I know how I might like to fix it. And also you build contacts as well, but that's by the by. It's more about finding your calling, and I think the only way you can do that is to sort of do the crap job and do a bit of navel gazing. There's no pressure to choose the right career. I know a guy who is in his 50s now, and I think he's had about 5 careers, and he's been self-employed amongst that. He's full-time now. And he's from South Africa, and he was saying it's the most natural thing in the world to change the career. He reckoned it was like every 5 or 10 years. You can be multiple things throughout your life. Just having one job that you do all your life in one industry seems to be a very British thing. On the continent, things like that, you can move from academia back into industry. You can do completely different things. This guy, he'd been a violinist He'd been in the army. He'd imported and exported fruit. Now he's an IT consultant. He just gets bored and fed up, you know. And freelancing gives me that because although I have this skill copywriting, I've worked in, you know, risk, banking, what else? Recruitment, you know, sustainable building, just really weird industries that I would never have thought of going into, but I found myself in them. That's pretty good. Yeah. Okay, so you've decided freelancing's for you, maybe in a couple of years' time, or you know, at the end of this lecture. This was really, again, this isn't something you'll find in your average business sort of self-help book, is that you have as much right to call yourself a freelance, you know, whatever it is you want to be, copywriter, photographer, biscuit detective, masseuse, whatever it is you want to be. You have as much right as anyone else to call yourself that, which sounds strange, but I mean, when I first went to networking events and met people, I'd mumble and say, oh, I'm a freelance, such and such a thing. And I wouldn't talk with any conviction or passion about what I do. And that's how you get work. You talk with conviction and passion to people, and they pick up on that. And I used to go looking on the internet at other people who did similar things to what I did, and that's just a complete recipe for disaster. What you end up doing is comparing people's big, fat, juicy, amazing portfolios with big companies in with your completely empty, I haven't got no experience, I haven't worked with anyone. And that's comparing your worst with their best, and it destroys your self-esteem. I made that mistake. So I thought I didn't have the right to call myself a freelancer, a copywriter. And it turns out I did all along. I'm not saying you should pretend to be a policeman or a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. So accepting some qualifications, I think, you know, just go out there and tell people you're a freelancer, because when you start telling other people, it becomes reality. It's not just in your head. It's like a commitment to other people. People know me as Chris the freelancer now, as opposed to, you know, Chris the guy who mumbles and isn't really sure what he does type thing. And it will evolve, by the way. You think you start out as a, you know, whatever it is you do, freelance gardener. By the end of it, it will have changed. You know, you specialise, you go into different things. You never just one thing. What you think you're doing now, that idea that you might have in your head about what you might do making a living, that will change, I guarantee it. It will be completely different to what you think it is now in a few years. We're on to the practical sort of steps now. We're over halfway now, so I'm speeding along because I'm mindful there's only a few of you. Finding work, how do you get work? Everyone always asks this question, and there isn't one magic thing I can say about how to get work. It is largely completely beyond your control, which is why I say don't worry about it, even though most people, like especially students thinking about freelancing, do worry about it a lot, which is why I get asked the question whenever I talk. I can tell you what works for me. I keep a lively web presence, so I blog about what I do. I go on social media. I'm not like prolific or anything. I might go keep my ear to the ground on it and occasionally tweet, like, you know, today here I'm at Leeds Trinity talking about freelancing and whatnot. That's about it. I might tweet once a day or so. LinkedIn, I keep a profile on there. But it's just about sort of, for you guys especially, I'm assuming you could be, when you start, you will start with nothing like I did. You just need to break that first big job, which is why the first 2 years, like I said at the start, are quite difficult. You need to find that first client who not only pays well, but it gives you quite a decent amount of work. Once you get that one job, that's the difficult thing, that first job. Once you get that and you crack it, more work comes from it. I don't know how it happens, but work breeds more work. And something always turns up. Like it's as if the cosmos knows when your bank balance is really low and you've got nothing, and something will turn up, and it's crazy. And now it just happens out of the blue. I don't go to networking events. I don't go out looking for work. Work finds me. I'm now 7 years into this. The first 2 years it wasn't like that, and I accept that. And it is difficult, which is why I say it demands courage. You know, you need to actually be a bit more proactive about it. I'm just complacent and lazy now. Also, I don't need to earn that much to live, so I don't stress about finding work. But it does happen. But that first job, you know, find that first big one.
So just an example then. How would Browns have found you? How did the restaurant?
How did they find me?
How did that contract come about?
again, like I say, it's completely like out of the blue. It was, I'd been to university. One of my best mates I went to university with, he had this vague relationship with this girl he kept pulling. She's a very pretty girl, and how did she get back into it? She stayed vaguely in contact with him, and she got engaged to someone who worked at an agency, a full-service marketing agency, and she got talking to someone else I went to uni with. Do you see how tenuous this is already? She got talking to someone else who freelancers. She went on maternity leave or something and couldn't do the job anymore. This pretty girl that my mate once pulled said, do you know any freelancers? My mate put her in touch with me. She added me on Skype. We spoke. Do you see how many leaps that is? How could you possibly be taught to make that happen? It's just about talking to people. I had met this girl at some point in my past. We're talking maybe 17 years ago, and she didn't particularly remember me. We knew who we one another were, but and it's tenuous, isn't it? And then she told her husband who worked for the agency. He got in touch, said, "Oh, okay, you can help us out." I got ambushed. I got a few days' work, and then I'm on their roster. That's it. Once you get your foot in the door at an agency, they'll come back to you again and again and again because they know you can deliver. Which comes back to that point I was saying before. You get one job, and it makes more jobs. Another example, I'll tell you, is this. I lived in Harrogate for a year, and I lived in a first floor flat, and that's where, at the back, there was a small bathroom, and I was sat down on the toilet having a sit-down toilet interlude, and I turned round to get the toilet paper because I stand up, and I looked at my eyes met with someone below, on the ground below, and it was the neighbour. He didn't know what I was doing. You could just see my top half, so I'm stood with my pants on my ankles, and he's saying like, you know, what? Oh yeah, hi, I'm Dave next door. I'm Chris, and we got speaking. He said he was. And oh yeah, he didn't know. I was stood there like that, and he says, "Oh, I work in publishing." I said, "Oh, that's funny. I'm a writer." And he said, "Oh, I need a graphic designer. Do you know? And I'm getting a website done." I said, "Oh, I know a graphic designer who does websites. I'll put you two in touch." You know, and that turned out to be a really profitable client for my mate, the graphic designer, and he's still doing work for them now. And you know, he doesn't know that I was stood with my pants from my ankle and I wiped my ass. But that's how tenuous is that? You can't pick up a book and teach you that. It's just about having conversations. And I'd heard that getting work was all about conversations, so I stayed there and had a chat with him because I saw that it was interesting. I wasn't just being shallow and looking for work. I was just having a chat with my neighbour. You know, that's as honest as it gets. So that's how it goes. I hope that's given you a flavour for just how random it is finding work. We're almost at the end now. This tip, I wish someone had told me this. I'm going to tell you now. I wish someone had told me this when I started. It might sound simple, but the easiest way to make the most of what money you have, disposable income, is to spend less, right? Everyone will tell you, no, you just need to earn more, which is so much extra pressure to find extra work. And I sort of thought, well, okay, when I first started, I just shrank my outgoing to the bare minimum, so I stopped eating meat. Well, certainly not twice a day, every day. I'm basically vegetarian still, but I eat meat occasionally, and that saved me like £3-4 on every meal. And then I got rid of my car because I work mainly in Leeds metropolitan area, and the buses, except in days like today, they're pretty good and cheap, the buses in Leeds. And then I cancelled my subscriptions to the gym and my mobile phone contract, and I run the bare minimum. I still enjoy life. I still like nice food. I still go out and drink. I've got a mortgage. All the things that normal people do, but I still do it now, and it's great. It means that you know how much you need to earn. You hit that target, and then you just I don't watch my bank balance, but I just don't worry about it anymore. And I'm not earning big double figures. Like I said, I was just above the income tax threshold last tax year, so. That's what I say. So yeah, spend less. That means you can work less. That means you have less stress on yourself to find more work, and it's this cycle. So it's this bit that's the important bit. It's reducing the pressure on yourself to find work, and it means you can last longer between jobs, because the way it works in freelancing is you don't have a constant stream of work. You have famines and feasts. You have loads of work that you can't cover, or you have nothing. Don't know why it happens. Actually, I do know why it happens. It's because you only get work when it's last minute. People ring up because they can't do something in-house. Someone's poorly and can't do it. their usual freelancer is unavailable and they'll ring you up and can you do it this afternoon? I've already got 2 emails like that on my phone now that I need to respond to, and it's the same thing. You know, like I was saying about the Cosmos knows when your bank balance is low and something turns up. That's what's happening right now. Okay. That's the end of the presentation. I'll just recap on what I've spoken about, just so you remember. So I spoke a little bit at the start about the characteristics of the kind of person who will find getting into freelancing easier, so that free-thinking, dangerous individual. These slides are all up on the web if you want them to get them. I'll put the address up on the end if you want to read them. I'll get the links from it. Yeah, so that independent, handy, sort of principled, motivated person will do well, but if it doesn't necessarily sound like you, it doesn't matter. You can learn these things. And one thing that might make you feel better is that there are so many arseholes out there who are making much, much more money than I am. They're doing quite well for themselves, and none of that description applies to them. They're just horrible people. There's a place for everyone, you know. I gave you a sense of what it is, that manifesto at the start about working less so you can do more of what you enjoy. That, to me, is the, I don't want to say ideology, so, yeah, I'll say ideology behind that, the Human Freelancer movement book, website that I've created. So that's the ethos behind it. We spoke a lot all the way through about well-being, and it's the bit that no one wants to talk about. I don't know whether it's associated with the whole stigma around mental health, which is changing for the better, it's getting more positive, but that idea that you need to look after yourself and make sure that you're getting what you want out of it and you're going to be happy and think your buttons are getting pressed, that's really important, because, like I say, there's no HR department when you're a freelancer. You know, you're on your own, and that can be quite demanding. And, you know, I sometimes wonder whether just because I'm mature and I've had experiences that it's a little bit easier for me. I don't know, but I have got mates who are in their early 20s and they went straight into freelancing, and they get on with it and they do fine. So it isn't just a sort of a late 20s thing. And finally, freelancing, like I said at the start, there's no division between work and life. It's the same thing. It's just a cumulative stream of good and bad experiences, and those sort of all add up to make you the person you are, and you would change. It's more than just a career. It is a way of life, and, you know, good, bad experiences. Isn't that what life should be? You know, learning things all the time, being challenged. That's what I want from my career. I don't want a comfortable job where stuff lands on my desk in the morning. I want to feel tested and do different things. I mean, look, here I am. I don't know how I got here, but here I am, you know. We wouldn't like to stand in front of some strangers and just talk about how great their life is. All right, so that's the end of my...